Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely mind-bending idea. What if reality doesn't actually need a watchmaker, but literally builds itself? We're going to connect the dots between the macroscopic world of biological evolution and the incredible microscopic realm of quantum physics. We'll be focusing specifically on Charles Darwin's original thesis and a really fascinating theoretical framework in physics known as Chronon field theory.
Because we are crossing a massive intellectual expanse today. Here's our roadmap. 1. Unlocking the origin mystery. 2. Darwin's biological engine. 3. Time as the ultimate force. 4. The Chronon field theory. 5. The universal observer. And finally, 6. A new lens on reality. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Unlocking the origin mystery.
How exactly does something emerge from absolute nothingness? It's a question that has puzzled philosophers, theologians, and scientists since the dawn of human thought. So the crucial point we're looking at is whether the staggering complexity of life in the universe requires a master planner operating from the outside, or if meaning and structure can emerge imminently. And by imminently, I mean from right within the system itself. Can order organically arise out of a field of pure potential? That is the big question, the main thread tying together the seemingly disparate fields we're exploring today.
Moving on to Section 2. Darwin's biological engine.
To understand how complexity emerges without an external designer, we've got to look first at Charles Darwin's revolutionary shift in biology. Darwin observed that instead of spontaneous, independent creation events, life adapts through one single, incredibly elegant mechanism. It's random variation combined with the struggle for existence. We know this as natural selection. It acts as an internal, self-running engine. Because populations are constantly growing, there's a severe struggle for life, right? So nature just simply preserves the variations that are profitable.
Look at Darwin's sheer wonder for biological complexity here. The intricate co-adaptations of nature, like that woodpecker clinging to the bark or mistletoe relying on specific birds. They don't just pop into existence perfectly formed out of nowhere. They emerge gradually. They're shaped by this internal engine over thousands of generations.
By looking at how humans have shaped domestic animals, Darwin provided a really tangible analogy for how nature's own power of selection builds infinite complexity over time. He noticed that if feeble humans can artificially breed incredibly diverse forms of pigeons and dogs from common ancestors, well then nature, with vastly more time and a rigid selection process for survival, can totally produce the spectacular divergence of species we see today. The engine is literally built into the system of life itself.
All right, Section 3, time as the ultimate force. So if biology requires an engine of adaptation, what's the engine of reality itself at the absolute fundamental quantum level? Let's check out a fascinating new theoretical framework first proposed by Professor Sam Vaknin in his 1982 PhD dissertation, and later expanded by physicist Amin Sadr. It attempts to clean up the bloated language of modern physics using just one single word. Vaknin points out that physics has become the sort of supernova of entities, mass, gravity, energy, momentum. To apply Occam's razor, which is the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best one, he set out to see if all of physics could be derived from one foundational concept, and that concept is time. Now, here is the absolute core assumption of Chronon field theory. Time is not just a passive river that flows or a static backdrop on a graph. It is the primary active force of the universe. It's a vast ocean of pure potential just waiting to happen.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Chronon field theory.
Let's break down exactly how this theory builds the universe out of this ocean of time. This step-by-step process shows how chronons act as the couriers of reality. Just like photons carry light, chronons carry time. When these time particles get excited, they essentially shapeshift through different states. These disruptions in the time field actually yield all known physics, mass, energy, forces, completely dispensing with the need for extra entities like string theory's hidden extra dimensions.
So in this new paradigm, particles don't actually exist as solid little billiard balls. They're merely probabilities that have been collapsed into actualized events within the time field. What we experience as physical reality, as space-time, is literally just a string of collapsed events happening within this overarching, timeless field of potential.
Section 5. The universal observer. But all of this brings us to a massive, totally mind-bending question. What exactly is collapsing these infinite probabilities into solid reality? According to Vaknin, meaning is the interaction between anything and the observer that brings it into being. Meaning isn't something that just floats around independently out there. Meaning is the universe fundamentally interacting with itself. For a wave of potential to become a real event, it absolutely has to be measured or observed.
So, can an unconscious device collapse reality? Relying on mathematical concepts like Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which basically proves systems can't validate themselves from the inside, Vaknin argues that an infinite number of unconscious lab instruments could never collapse the total time field. It would literally take longer than the heat death of the universe. Therefore, the theory posits that the universal observer, the actual mechanism doing the collapsing, must be inherently conscious and self-aware.
Let's look at a great way to visualize this with a smartphone analogy. A phone is endowed with potential meaning by its creator, but only becomes aware and meaningful when you interact with it. It elegantly explains how meaning and consciousness aren't strictly human traits, but arise from the interaction between the observer and the observed. Your smartphone sits dark and dormant until you, the creator and observer, look at it or touch it. It's programmed to wake up under your gaze. Vaknin suggests we and all matter function similarly. We basically wake up and acquire meaning when observed by the broader time field itself.
Notice how closely science and spirituality align here when translating these concepts. As an impartial explainer of this material, it is genuinely fascinating to see how Vaknin maps Chronon field theory onto a theological framework. In the scientific language, the universal observer is the imminent, self-aware time field collapsing wave functions. In the religious translation, God is the time field, and we are realized potentials within God's mind. So God isn't an external figure acting from the outside. God literally is the field. The universe is an inside job, and we are simply actualized potentials occurring imminently within that field.
And that leads us to Section 6, a new lens on reality.
Let's tie all of these groundbreaking ideas together. Both Darwin's biological engine and the Chronon field point to a pretty staggering conclusion. The universe doesn't need external intervention to explain its complexity. It's an elegant, imminent engine that builds itself. Biology adapts from the inside out through natural selection. Physics actualizes from the inside out through a self-aware field of time collapsing its own potentials into events. The creator is not separate from the creation. They are inextricably linked.
If reality is a field of infinite potentials actualized by our observation, what will you observe into existence next? Think deeply about that as you leave the explainer today. Both biology and quantum physics suggest a universe that is incredibly dynamic, responsive, and deeply interconnected. Your interaction with the universe is quite literally what gives it meaning. So what potentials are you going to collapse into reality today? Thanks so much for joining me on this journey, and keep exploring.